It's March the 10th, 2021, and our reading today in Joshua is in chapter 18. The whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. The country was brought under their control, but there were still 7 Israelite tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. So Joshua said to the Israelites, "How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, has given you? Appoint 3 men from each tribe. I will send them out to make a survey of the land and to write a description of it according to the inheritance of each. Then they will return to me. You are to divide the land into 7 parts. Judah is to remain in its territory on the south, and the house of Joseph in its territory on the north. After you have written descriptions of the 7 parts of the land, bring them here to me, and I will cast lots for you in the presence of the Lord our God. The Levites, however, do not get a portion among you, because the priestly service of the Lord is their inheritance. And Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan. Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave it to them." As the men started on their way to map out the land, Joshua instructed them, "Go and make a survey of the land and write a description of it. Then return to me, and I will cast lots for you here at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord." So the men left and went through the land. They wrote its description on a scroll, town by town, in 7 parts, and returned to Joshua in the camp at Shiloh. Joshua then cast lots for them in Shiloh in the presence of the Lord, and there he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their tribal divisions. The lot came up for the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan. Their allotted territory lay between the tribes of Judah and Joseph. On the north side, their boundary began at the Jordan, past the northern slope of Jericho, and headed west into the hill country, coming out at the desert of Beth Aven. From there it crossed to the south slope of Luz, that is Bethel, and went down to Ataroth Adar on the hill south of lower Beth Horon. From the hill facing Beth Horon on the south, the boundary turned south along the western side and came out at Kiriath Baal, that is Kiriath Jearim, a town of the people of Judah. This was the western side. The southern side began at the outskirts of Kiriath Jearim on the west, and the boundary came out at the spring of the waters of Nephtoah. The boundary went down to the foot of the hill, facing the valley of Ben Hinnom, north of the valley of Rephaim. It continued down the Hinnom Valley along the southern slope to the Jebusite city, and so to En Rogel. It then curved north, went to En Shemesh, continued to Geliloth, which faces the pass of Adumim, and ran down to the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben. It continued to the northern slope of Beth Arabah, and on down into the Arabah. It then went to the northern slope of Beth Hogla, and came out at the northern bay of the Salt Sea at the mouth of the Jordan in the south. This was the southern boundary. The Jordan formed the boundary on the eastern side. These were the boundaries that marked out the inheritance of the clans of Benjamin on all sides. The tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan, had the following cities: Jericho, Beth Hogla, Emek, Keziz, Beth Arabah, Zemaraim, Bethel, Avim, Para, Ophrah, Kipha, Ammoni, Ophni, and Geba, 12 towns and their villages. Gibeon, Ramah, Beeroth, Mizpah, Kephirah, Moza, Rechem, Erpil, Tarala, Zelah, Hayelef, the Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem, Gibeah, and Kiriath, 14 towns and their villages. This was the inheritance of Benjamin for its clans. Amen. Now this chapter, we're in the midst now of these long lists of places and cities given as inheritance to all the tribes of Israel. But this chapter begins with something new and different that we've not seen before. the Israelite base of operations now moves from Gilgal, which they'd established just after their invasion, coming across the Jordan, remember that? Now, where to? Chapter 18, verse 1, to Shiloh. That's significant because Shiloh is right in the center of the country. If you get a map, you can see that. And not only are they at Shiloh, but they've established there the tent of meeting, it says. And the significance of that is pretty obvious because that is where they meet with God. In effect, that's where God lives. And he is right at the center of all of these operations. Verse 1. But as we move into verse 2, we also see that there's an element of tension here. And we've noted this, or there have been these notes along the way. Yes, the country was brought under their control, it says in verse 1, mighty victories, wonderful blessings from God. And in a sense, in essence, the whole country is now conquered. And yet 7 tribes, verse 2, 7 of the Israelite tribes had not yet received their inheritance. So there's a tension between what they've been given and what they have conquered. But what they haven't done is they haven't received it, or some of these tribes, they haven't entered in, they haven't possessed it, they haven't settled down, they haven't taken hold of it. So verses 3 to 10 then include some very important details for us at this point in the campaign. And it would seem that these 7 tribes, the implication is here that they are lagging behind the other tribes we've seen in the previous chapters. And they now have to rise up in faith. And hence the challenge of verse 3. How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, has given you? We have the challenge, then we have the commission. It's not just a challenge, but there's a plan of action that Joshua brings to these people. Verse 4, these 21 surveyors who are sent out, a bit different from the 12 spies that we saw way back in Numbers, or even the 2 spies in chapter 2 of Joshua. These are surveyors. That's their job, to make a survey of the land and write a description of it. All of that will lead, verse 5, to the division of the land into the 7 parts for the 7 tribes. And that will happen, verse 6, by the casting of lots. We have references to the Levites in verse 7, and also then to the 2.5 tribes east of the Jordan, which we have noted often. And then in verses 8 to 10, we have the implementation of this wise plan. They do exactly what Joshua tells them to do. And they come back with the description, the survey of the land. Joshua then begins to cast lots for them in Shiloh in the presence of the Lord. And there he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their tribal divisions. Verses 11 to 28, beginning with Benjamin. The lot came up, verse 11, for the tribe of Benjamin, one of the smallest of the tribes. And yet, interestingly, there's quite a lot of detail here for this little tribe. We're given the details of the territory they will be given, verse 11 and following. The boundaries, north, south, east, west. And finally, all the cities, verse 21 and following. They're called cities and then they're called towns. There are 12 of them mentioned in verse 24. There are 14 of them mentioned in verse 28. And he sums it all up. This was the inheritance of Benjamin for its clans. I think there is a challenge in all of this for us as believers today. The challenge not to be lazy, not to be unbelieving, not to drag our feet, as it were. When we think of what God has done for us, when we think that he's given us everything richly to enjoy, everything to meet our deepest spiritual needs, and thereby we can live for him and for his glory. He's done it all. He's given it all. And yet, like these Israelites, these 7 tribes, 7 of them, they had to learn again that you've got to go in, you've got to go out, you've got to fight, you've got to believe. This is what real faith is like. It acts, and you've got to possess your possessions. There's no greater summary of this principle. We find it in the Old, we find it in the New Testament. There's no greater summary of it than Philippians 2, 12 and 13. Therefore, my dear friends, as you've always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose.